varying shades. You can also leave your comments on the live chat and send WhatsApp messages in 20809 440 Also, we're up on Twitter at Smooth981FM. If you want to use Twitter, the way to get in on the conversation is by using the hashtag Freshlypressed981. It's my favorite hashtag of the show because it's the one I'm always saying. All right, so let's get into the topics of conversation. First off, from the Vanguard newspaper, scarcity of funds triggers 253% rise in banks borrowing from the CB. And this is the scarcity of funds in the interbank money market, intensifying last week, prompting this giant spike. Wadi, I'm coming to you for this.
This is it. You know, when I was looking at this story and I'm telling myself, where exactly are we with Nigeria's economy? And if more and more banks are continually borrowing week on week from the CBN, then we're really in a very catastrophic state, in my opinion. It's amazing that MPR is continually going up
and might go up more.
and might go up more
because the MPC is right now.
yeah, and they will finish their meetings today. And once that is done, it means that there's going to be more liquidity squeezing in the market. Maybe one of the reasons for the redesign of the naira, but we haven't seen that flow of the so-called cash outside the system coming back into the system. So if about 80-85% of cash is outside the system, then we have this kind of situations, because at the end of the day, banks need to fund. They need to fund not just projects. They need to fund the economy. They need to be able to give out loans and other things. And that's why we're having this. A lot of the banks already have so many huge loans, especially against the power sector, that hasn't really come back because the sector hasn't been able to collect the kind of funds that everybody was expecting. They have loans based on oil and gas, and we can see the shortage of petrol because we can't see the monies returning the way it should be, because prices of landing costs of petrol is continually going up and we're not receiving the same, and the federal government, who should pay the differential, actually is not releasing the number of those funds. We've been printing money for God knows how long now, so I guess they're trying to cool down and slow down on that, because inflation is heading towards 21%, if not already at 21%. So there are a number of things, and for the banking sector to continually live on a day-to-day basis, they need to fund their immediate transactions, and that's why you see the interbank market, just swinging like a pendulum.
Roller coastering. That's our new word.
Swinging like a pendulum. So we hope with the MPC Monetary Policy Committee meeting today, but something tells me, like Ikemesit and I said, they're probably going to increase MPR.
Well, that seems to be the word on the ground.
Which is, in my opinion, going to be more detrimental to the economy at this rate, because you can't borrow.
Yeah.
And the banks are not even pushing their savings rates as high as expected, so that they can get in more funds. But the truth of the matter is, really, is there any fund in the system for even banks to get the kind of deposits that they require? And shooting up your costs.
It's worth explaining, right? So MPR is lagging against inflation.
Yeah.
So if you're offering rates that are lagging behind inflation, you're in effect losing money.
Yeah.
Right? And if the banks, right, have their savings rates which lag behind MPR, then I mean it's a losing game all through.
It's obvious that you can't do that, because at the end of the day, don't mind me. At the end of the day, I would be getting a lower rate for my investments or for my deposits, in comparison to if I become a loan shark and borrow shopware at MPR rates, and I can chase you down if you don't pay me.
Okay, I didn't say that.
Yeah, no.
Yeah.
Thank you. Moving on. Let's look at the high points right now, because the naira is appreciating, exchanging for 445 naira and 38 kobo to the dollar. This coming in from the Punch newspaper.
Good news, at least for those who trade in CBN window. I hope this is not appreciating for the fact that you get the...
That's like 0.0000 what?
0.
Of Nigerians?
That's what I'm saying.
And I did listen to the Freshly Press for them to receive the congratulations.
You let me laugh.
Back to what Wadi was saying.
Because for everyone.
Ikemesit is waiting to pounce. Wadi, you were saying?
So like that's good news for those who trade in CBN window. But my biggest fear now is this: do you get this dollar and actually apply it to the right places that you're supposed to apply it, which has truly, in the real sense of it, never really been the full case of it. We know people who collect BTAs at 400 BTAs and sell at the black market rates. And
It's very difficult to get.
Yeah, now
No, the people who can get.
Yeah. That's the window that we're talking
We're talking
about.
about fractions of percentages here.
Yeah, but I want to blow now.
But yeah, so for the rest of us that are not,
We'll go to the black market, and I don't think it's appreciating in that area. And
Sure.
these are the things that we must be able to put together. We must let the parallel market and the what's it called, the CBN markets come back together so that we can have.
but it's not happening at
It
this rate.
depreciated from Friday to Monday. That much I do know.
Yeah,
Because
it's been appreciated for
It's
24
been doing that your
For like
pendulum.
a
that
second.
pendulum thing. So it's
Yeah,
gone
yeah.
up and
well,
down.
from over the weekend
So
into
those-
yesterday.
Those prayer warriors who can pray well, maybe they'll just pray. If they come to 6
It's not
and
going to
buy
be
on
like
that day.
prayer.
Meanwhile, D from Alausa says this up on WhatsApp that the liquidity squeeze is good for Naira appreciation. One reason for liquidity squeeze is a mopping up of the Naira. And Life from Prestack has an agenda. Life says let Nigerian students protest to American, British, and other embassies with a letter that those countries should stop Nigerians from coming to school in their country. Would that help the Naira? Okay, gotcha.
No,
Gotcha. Moving
no,
on. Moving
no,
on.
it won't.
They won't.
Yeah, I'm wondering if that's where life is coming from. Okay, Ikemesit, let me come to you for this story. It comes in from the Vanguard newspaper. Cooking gas price increases by 0.21%. So, this is the average price of a 5 kilograms of cooking gas going from 4,474 naira and 48 kobo in September to 4,483.75 naira and 75 kobo in October.
Yeah, and then for the average retail price for a 12.5 kilogram cooking gas container increased from 9,906 to north of 10,000. Again, it's not indices. These are not only averages; these are national averages, and so the numbers vary widely.
Let me tell you what
geographically.
Let me tell you what a bad, terrible thing to do is when you had to just do it like year on year because when you have the larger canisters and then you buy it, let's say last year, and then you come back this year and you're like, oh, it's more than tripled.
Yeah, exactly. First shopper though. Not many Nigerians buy
I
gas
know, I
nowadays,
know.
but yeah, but it you're right. It does put the issue into stark contrast if you do it that way. So generally from the MBS's numbers, right? Kwara is the most expensive place to get a 5 kilogram container of cooking gas, right? In the country, followed by Niger and Adamawa. Yeah, so generally the central states, right? And the lowest is in, I think, what, Abia, then Kano, and then
This
Delta.
is
So
not-
the
this is
numbers
not
are.
bad. So I'm sure the flood must have also.
Oh yeah, it
brought
was
some of-
it was certainly
in
have
terms
had
of-
an impact.
in terms of
Right,
being able to
yeah,
get
also
enough
the fact
supply.
exactly also the fact that let's not forget gas is important. It's imported, and what little gas that we produce and we plow into the domestic market, the LNG has had declared a force majeure, right? Actually within this period, right? Again because of the floods and also because some of it's down chain vendors had issues. Right. So cooking gas prices generally tick up in the lead up to Christmas, right? For obvious reasons.
Yeah.
So the upside on gas prices, right? Would only go up. And then when you compare this with the fact that food inflation is what, north of 20%.
23.
Yeah, exactly. It's north of 20%. The prices of commodities in our last Jollof Index, right? The SBM Jollof Index. Egg, for example, which has been the favorite protein substitute of choice since many people have fled en masse from beef and turkey and chicken.
What, those expensive animals?
Indeed, yeah. As in some parts of the country, almost double. So it's like every component of the culinary experience right now is only inching upwards. So,
Yeah. The bright side of this is now you appreciate your food more.
We do.
We always
I'm
do.
trying to, I'm trying to find the bright side.
That spin.
Now you
Well,
sit
You've
and
not
you
had
but
much
but
time to perfect that spin.
no, now you sit and you savor it as opposed to before where you were just eating it like, oh, it's food. I'll always have it. Now you're like, who knows when next I'll have it. Let me enjoy it.
Have you eaten with the average Nigerian? We just want to eat and then
And
get back to what
move
we're
on.
doing so that we can
so that we can get the
money
money to eat for tomorrow.
to eat the next meal.
Now you savor it because, like I said, from the Punch newspaper, Nigeria won't face food crisis, as we've just been talking about stuff like this. Federal government replies an IMF. So this was on Monday as it kicked against the projections of the International Monetary Fund. So on Monday, the IMF was quoted as saying that Nigerians should brace up for higher food prices and risks in 2023 due to the recent floods and high fertilizer prices. But the Federal Ministry of Agriculture and Rural Development opposed the position of the global financial institution, providing a document detailing what they had done and was what the ministry had done and was doing to avert such a crisis. And that's been a gong that the ministry and the minister have been beating, saying that nothing, its production is still underway. There's going to be no scarcity. Why do we keep coming back to this?
So it's one of two things, right? There might be no scarcity, but at what price point will food be available? I think it's critical to
And that is the question.
Yeah, it's critical to underscore that. And we've been talking about the fact that food inflation right now is, boring its heels into household spending in Nigeria, right? Per a 2019 study that we did, right, the average Nigerian household spends 63% of their income on food. That percentage has almost certainly risen, right?
Yeah.
To keep up with food inflation. Just last week, we were talking about the fact that 133 million Nigerians, right? Or is it 130 million? I think it's 133 million Nigerians are multidimensionally poor, in part because living standards have dropped, and right, food consumption is a key component, right, of that. Nigeria is one of 5 countries at the World Food Program, right, and the Food and Agriculture Organization has classified as a high food risk, country, right? 7 million Nigerians are expected to go into some form of food insecurity before the end of the year. So I don't know what. Maybe the minister is trying to be apocryphal. Is trying to be prophetic.
How many were there before?
Right.
If you're adding 7 million to.
I forget the numbers now, but it's tens of millions of Nigerians, really. Right. Yeah. I mean, if you count internally displaced Nigerians, if you count Nigerians who are unemployed or underemployed, the nutritional attainment outcomes, right, of Nigerians. Most Nigerian kids, for example, are protein deficient.
And if you look at the 133 million that they were talking about, 50% of them fell into the kids area.
Precisely, right? So we have data, and this is not just data that other people have generated out there. This is data. I mean, the presidency signed off on, last week's, MICS, right, report, right? So on the one hand, the government is acknowledging that it has a problem, but it's telling people
on the other hand,
it's telling people not to be worried because it is doing things. But what are those things really, right? And what have they been able to accomplish, right? Nigerians can clearly see the dissonance because Nigerians go to the market every day, right?
Probably going to work out in the 2025 million plan.
This is not one of those esoteric issues, for example, like democracy or electoral reform that seems like it's pie in the sky. This is family budgets. Everyone is preparing for Christmas. People are everyone has to eat every day. So this is an issue that Nigerians are fairly well acquainted with. Simply telling people they shouldn't be afraid and they shouldn't worry, right? Almost smacks of official gaslighting at this point. Right? The government needs to come up with a better explanation, and it certainly needs to work harder at fixing these issues. Simple and short.
All right.
Next administration, maybe.
No, we don't. We still have time until the next administration.
You're the one that was just saying that we have time now to serve our music. Let's be savoring it to May 29.
Calm down, Ikemesit. But what I'm trying to say is, like Ikemesit has pointed out, we need to eat on a daily basis.
We can't fast till May.
On a daily basis.
You can't fast.
For a certain amount of time before your body gives up. I mean, there's a difference between fasting from food and fasting for water, and we all know that, and I know that you're just poking the bear right now, but still, it is.
He's doing what the minister did. He's gaslighting.
It is a very, very, very important issue that needs to be addressed. Thank you very much.
And it's been addressed.
You know, enjoying the look on her face, whether you made the story personal.
Dami from Encourage says the problems with traditional policy solutions in Nigeria is that our leaders have over decades enabled workarounds to legal processes, aka the black markets. Almost every action by our institutions can be skirted by those with means, while the poor and struggling masses end up with the side effects. I'm 17 years from my last economics class, but how do you have a liquidity squeeze in a 20 plus percent inflation environment? How does that happen?
Preach, preach.
This day newspaper, now federal government partners UNICEF, WHO, and others to assess the state of primary health care centers in a bid to further improve healthcare services. They've embarked on this assessment of the progress made in restoring these PHCs to functionality, both at the national and subnational levels. Ikemesit, let me come to you for this.
Yeah, so this program has been going on for a while. The federal government has self-reported that about 4,000 primary healthcare centers out of the targeted 10,000 PHCs have been renovated so far in the country. As context, there are an estimated 30,000 PHC facilities right across the country. So we're dealing with basically a third of all facilities that are going to be captured under the program. And there have been some demonstrable progresses. At least I know, for example, that the PHC in my community, for example, in Mendy, it painted, renovated.
In Lagos, a number of
Yeah.
PHCs have been
Yeah,
actually benefited from it.
yeah, exactly. Right. Yeah. But if you look at some of the if you look at some of the research, right, for example, right, there's this 2019 study, for example, that shows that 20% of all PhDs in the country were in a solid working condition. Maybe with this renovation, those percentages have inched up. But I don't know if we've gotten to say half, for example, or to some threshold where people feel, for example,
That
that
can get back
the
to how it
level
used
of
to be.
primary health care that we receive, yes, is up to scratch. I think that's the first part. The second thing to note is just like, and I've made this argument, right, with respect to primary education, so you're familiar with it, right? Dealing with the primary, or let's recast that, right? Dealing with the entry stages of things like healthcare and education, right, are vital social interventions, which basically act as low-hanging fruit, and you can begin to see actionable outcomes, right? So PHCs are the front lines of dealing with things like immunizations, right, malaria, measles, and all of these other things, right? And if you have a robust primary healthcare system, then a lot of preventable death, a lot of what researchers and scientists call excess death, right, is preventable. Mortality rates tend to come down. You're able to do things like um, deliver safe births and all of that. And I know there's been a lot of intervention, right, in that part of the sector. What I don't know is if we've been doing a lot of spending, right, in that sector. I do know that the health component of our budget year on year throughout the Buhari years, right, as with education and a couple of other things, right, has been trending downwards. So the overall trends do not look exactly promising. Um, yeah, but at the very least, we have schemes like this which are supposed to sort of plug in the gap.
Now,
But
part of the schemes, though,
but like Dio said, plugging in the gap can only go so far. We're a growing country,
damn,
right? Yeah, or damn it, rather. We're a growing country. Our population growth rate is 2.5% a year, something on the order of what 600, 700,000 Nigerians are born every year.
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. It's
No.
almost, are you sure it's no more than that?
Is yeah.
Now, hold on. Another thing that to consider, right, with the renovations we're seeing going on in some of them, not all of them, and also in places where people would need it, we're seeing not as much as we would like. But let's talk staff shortages as well, because when we talk about medical brain drain, there's that. But even within the country for these primary healthcare facilities, there've been some notorious staff shortages, and yeah.
Yes, primarily, right. In many parts of the country, and this is something that has been highlighted, I think, previously on Freshly Press. In many parts of the country, right, the only time people get access to proper medical expertise, especially at the primary healthcare level, is NYC, when you have NYC doctors that are posted to those communities. Again, works as a stopgap, but it's not a solid foundation for building a robust primary healthcare delivery system.
But
Right.
it didn't used to be like that. How did this happen?
Abandonment. Yeah, abandonment. When you stop doing the right things, like every relationship, like every complex system or organism, right? When you stop doing the right things in terms of maintaining and improving the system, rot sets in, degradation sets in, dilapidation sets in, and that's what has happened in primary health. And really, what needs to happen, right, is with education and with healthcare, a lot of the funding, a lot of the budgetary priorities needs to be shifted away from recurrent expenditure and down towards building up primary healthcare. You need to pay better salaries, you need to improve facilities, you need to ensure that drugs and the supply chains of medicines, right, are taken care of. We need to make these sort of places attractive for people to stay and work. Is grudge work. Even if you have all the right facilities, all you need to do is to watch any medical TV series in order for you to know how tough being in medicine is. Right now, we have a system in the country that actively disincentivizes people from working.
Now, the question I'm going to ask is how much of an intervention are we going to need to see budget wise when we're talking about that? Because, like you said, we've seen the numbers trending downwards, but going according to, let's say, even UN recommended levels, are we going to need to go above that if we want to see any sort of demonstrable difference, let's say within the next 5 years?
Well, yeah, I think we would have to, right?
And how much of it, like how big of an intervention are we looking at, and is that something we can do just
maybe for education and health put together, maybe about 20% of your budget.
Yeah, probably, because
as
we're
a
doing
starting
like,
point.
yeah, we're doing three,
We're doing less than together.
That is a huge jump.
Yeah. So you need to increase it by at least 100%. So if you're doing between about 10%, and you have to do it consistently for at least 4-5 years, and then you can see that actually coming into play, and more people will get attracted. There are some people who actually really want to work for social service. But like you said, if I have to go to a primary health care in a remote area, I can't. There's no place to stay. There are no medications.
I don't have access to electricity.
I can do all the physical checks and all. Are you with me? But I can't recommend the medication aside from Panadol.
Yeah.
Boy, that stopped me in my tracks. Okay, let's move on now. So the next article that we are there we go. Next article that we're going to talk about. Isn't this a fun repeat? From the Punch newspaper, petrol and electricity subsidies are hurting poor Nigerians, according to the World Bank, which says that the subsidies are benefiting only rich households, and that they're enabling a reduction of government spending on poor Nigerians. All of this contained in a statement on the bank's website announcing the launch of the new Nigeria Public Finance Review report. So, according to the bank, our resources have been consumed by inefficient and regressive subsidiaries. On subsidizing on petrol, electricity, and foreign exchange, and they were far more than what was spent on education, health, and social protection in 2021. I love how we've been talking about this, and here we go.
Totally agree.
Okay.
And the reasons are this, because when we're talking about education and health now, let's look at the 2023 budget, for instance. The projection is between 6 and 7 trillion on petrol subsidies. That's just petrol. And if we look at the power sector also,
and the budget is like what, 20 billion?
Yeah, 20 billion. So that's about 1/3 of it. And because nobody has really done, and I'm sure if Ikemesit and Cheta do the details or show me the detailed studies in the power sector, we'll probably be looking at least another half of that in the power sector. So you're looking at spending about half of the budget on subsidies on electricity and petrol. I know a lot of people will say, oh, petrol, that's the only thing we get as a common man, but that's not the reality. We need to take away subsidies from petrol. We need to take away subsidies from electricity. Nigerians have been, and I say this in all honesty, Nigerians have been spoiled with electricity, because at the end of the day, what happens is,
wait for him.
And I would explain to you. I'm not in the room and I turn on the AC and I'm gone. I will go out and I will come back, because I want that room to be extremely chilled. So it's 24 hours of power that you've used. And on the average, a 1 horsepower, what's it called, AC, takes you about 18 units of electricity. So let's just a pushback.
Is yeah.
Do the pushback.
See,
It's quite interesting because for some
but-
other
but-
people they leave the air conditioner on if they have one because they don't have lights, so they don't know when next there's gonna be light, which means that they want it to be cool. But if they somehow bring lights when they're away,
so they bring the light when you're away and you're burning the electricity. You can't store.
you're not burning it when you're at home because there's no light.
I understand your larger point though.
But
I understand your larger point, which is that we're not paying fair value.
Yeah.
For the power that we generate, right? And that acts as a disincentive.
Aside from the first value, we do. I don't think we have a lot of waste, and like what you said, because we're not conscious of that. There's no light. I forgot to turn on the AC.
But why do you make it sound as if the waste is the reason why we have the dilapidated power sector that we have?
No. The reason why we have the dilapidated power sector is because the investment in the power sector has been next to nothing.
Exactly.
Are you with me? This government has said, they're working with Siemens to try and invest in the midstream of the power sector, which is transmission, which will be a great value.
Which is the real gap, right?
Which will be great real value addition, because even if the Gencos or the Discos continue to spend money, which a number of them are continually spending,
the letdown will be the transmission.
Exactly, because there's the
and
limit
more
on
importantly, we did not deregulate transmission.
And I understand why government said they didn't want to deregulate that. However, there must be this consistency of looking at transmission from a commercial perspective. And when I mean commercial, I mean it must be able to generate money for itself to be able to continue to push the infrastructure.
And the government get out of transmission.
You just need the right. So initially bringing in the right management that was driving in that direction, and those are part of the things that you would see in the Siemens agreement. Of they are not going to get out completely because the social aspect, which is the subsidized aspect of power, is a huge issue in Nigeria because of the population of Nigeria and the level of rural areas in Nigeria. But you need to be able to ensure that investment in infrastructure is right and all. And
but people don't want to put their money because they're not sure that
Nigeria
and then it goes back to the second part. Then the education for you and I, are you with me?
Yeah.
About power wastage would drop these things a lot. Sometime in August, September, there was so much electricity being pumped out.
Why did they try from the larger point, which is that we continue to subsidize electricity, especially at the generation level and also somewhat at the distribution level. And the larger point that they are making is get that out. Get Nigerians acculturated to the reality of paying fair value for power, and that would make our market, which is automatically large, more attractive.
Sope says we should get on.
All right.
We've had enough.
All right, let's read your messages. Ola from Apava says, saying, what's going on with you on power this morning?
Precisely.
Do you put off your deep freezers or fridge when you're not at home? How do we waste power in Nigeria?
I can testify as a baby boy.
Lizzie says the IMF should investigate the fraud in Nigeria's subsidy of petrol and electricity. Diesel was deregulated. How has it benefited Nigerians? And Fabian from Ekpa says the PHCs in Lagos State are being renovated by the state and not the federal government. Why can't they engage the real stakeholders in the sector and put things in place for continuous training, also improving the annual allocation in the budget rather than knee-jerk reactions?
Where's the state getting the money from?
No, I mean, primary healthcare is a shared responsibility between the state and the federal government. So
they could have gotten access to those.
That's why the outcomes vary disproportionately across states, because you can see the states that invest and the ones that
are not investing. The ones that just collect the funds and buy Panadol.
Judge, what do you hear me underscore? Both of them. Those are their names up on Twitter. Yeah, it's been a pleasure.
Thank you for having us on the
studio. I've just been sitting back and watching them, guys. That's what I like to do best when we're together.
I enjoy Ikemesit better on Zoom and away from Uade.
I enjoy you better in the studio, but away from Uade.
We need to get Justin back. Like the three of us.
No.
One show. Just one.
No, even I'm not ready for that.
Just
If
one.
you guys did one show, that would be the only show. There would be no more shows. There would be no more shows.
I don't understand what you're talking
Yeah,
about.
the fire
Thank you,
was
Lagos, for
burned.
listening to us. Have a
Thank
great
you
day.
so much. All right, coming up 8:15 is gonna be the grapevine. We'll have Rick Hazani in the studio. It'll be fun. It'll be a great conversation. All right, catch you there, and also during Lagos Talks at 9 o'clock.
The headlines.